What's up, America? Neil here with Geauga Firearms Academy. Thanks for watching. Today we're going to be starting a series on red dots. In this video we're going to call it Why Red Dots? For those of you that have followed me for a while now, you know that I was not the first one on board with red dots. But as all things evolve, so does my training, and so I'm on the red dot boat. So let's get started. For my new people, welcome and thank you. This is going to be hopefully very informative for you. So if you're not brand new and you've actually used these before and you're looking for a little bit of more of benefits to that, you can go to that next timestamp. But for my new people, what's the difference? When I look at iron sights, that means I have a rear sight that has a notch in it of some sort. I have a front sight that's supposed to fit in that notch. I'm trying to get equal height, as in not like this, but level, and equal light, meaning light on both sides of the front post. I'm going to take my focus from the actual target to the front sight. So if you take your fingernail and you look at it, you can focus on your cuticle and all the creases on there, but the background is going to be blurry. Or you can look at the background, but that will make your finger blurry. So you have to pick your point of focus, and with the iron sight setup, it's always going to be that front sight. Well, that changes with red dots. In that case, whatever you're looking at, whatever the threat situation is, the bad guy with a knife or a gun or whatever, you're going to stay looking and focused on that, and then we're going to superimpose the dot. So you'll hear people all the time, and I use it in marketing because people say it all the time, finding the dot. You have trouble finding the dot. Of course you have trouble finding the dot because you're looking for it. We're not looking for it. Once we do it properly, we're staying focused, and the dot will magically appear, if you will. It will superimpose right in front of the target. And then wherever the dot is, if everything is done properly, including you doing your job, that bullet should impact where that dot is, roughly. Okay, so what the major difference is, instead of using metal sights or plastic sights to line up sights equal height and equal light, now I'm superimposing a dot and staying focused on the actual target the entire time. The other thing that you'll see with different optics and different options, which again I don't want to complicate this, is you have a single dot, and a lot of times you'll have a circle with the dot in the center, and the purpose of the circle is when we're really close, kind of CQB distance, real life self-defense distances. Basically I just need to put that big circle center mass, and as long as I'm within center mass, I'll be in good shape. So it helps you kind of acquire even faster. Again, we're not looking for dots, we're not looking for the aperture, we're simply just putting the dot superimposed on the target. We'll get a little bit more in detail in a minute here, but shooting with both eyes open is critically important. And shooting with both eyes open, starting off with iron sights, can definitely be challenging. You can get double vision and blurriness because you're trying to use your dominant eye. We also need to test and figure out our dominant eye as well. And then there's some things that we can do to try to work through that process that I always talk about as far as training your mind to find that front sight at distance. Great news about that is we're going to keep both eyes open. As long as we can see the threat, our brain is going to take the dot that it sees in the eye, it's going to superimpose it onto the actual target itself, and we're going to be able to do our job. Why the delay? Why was I against red dots? I was never against red dots. I didn't want to use them for myself right off the bat. I had almost 2 decades worth of professional shooting, and when I picked up a red dot, and of course without training, which we all know the value is extremely high of training, so it doesn't matter what it was, we always need to get trained. But when I picked it up, obviously I did the same thing everybody does, which is the where's the dot test, right? And people come up with all these nonsense ways of moving heads and moving guns and tilting things and closing eyes and doing all this crazy stuff that is unnecessary and doesn't make any real sense, because you're not going to see any professional shooters in lines doing weird things. That said, I was probably 3 times faster finding my front sight than I was a dot. So until I had enough time behind the gun, until I had enough experience with dots, I was not on the red dot boat. Times have changed. I've continued to work on things, and now I'm at a point where the dot, and I've taken enough training, finding the quote-unquote finding the dot, which obviously we don't want to do, which we'll talk about in a little bit, is easy to do. It actually happens faster than finding the front sight. Now in this series, we're going to break this up Along the way, of course, we're also going to be doing some exclusive content specifically for Patreon, like we always do, that you won't get on here. But we're going to talk about fit and function. Red dots vary just like any other product. Again, in the shape of them, the size of the lens, types of features that they offer, different brands, the emitters, whether they're open or closed, and we're going to talk about all those different things. Today, I really want to focus on this first video of what is the real benefit of the red dot. First and foremost, when we look at the fundamentals of shooting, and this is very, very true, this is why I always push police departments to at least look into that. I don't like anyone to say you must do this or you must not do that, but I think it's imperative that they give officers an opportunity to get some training on it and check it out, because the benefits are definitely there. If you watched videos and whatnot, you're going to see one of the old phrases we changed in police work, or at least we departments should, is show me your hands. You hear that a lot, show me your hands, because that's where bad things happen. We don't want to say that, because you could very well show someone your hands with a weapon in it and then end up doing something that you don't intend to when the person did what you asked. So now it's freeze, and we give them commands and so on and so on. But whether you're a CCW or you're law enforcement or security or whatever the case is, the ability to see the hands, the ability to see the whole scene continually is a huge benefit, and one of the biggest benefits to red dots. So unlike a front sight, or unlike iron sights, where I'm going to switch from the scene and specifically the threat to the front sight, and now I'm locked in on that and not necessarily seeing everything as clearly anymore, now I can stay on the scene, on the threat itself. I can stay, matter of fact, one of the things that we do in classes now is we'll put a circle on our target. We use typically the OPATA targets, which is just Ohio Standard, a training target for police officers, and I have them write their name or a short name on it. And the purpose of that is so that they stay focused on that. So if your name is Bob, you're watching Bob the whole time as you draw and present, and when you, from holster to that round going towards that threat, we should be able to stay focused on Bob the whole time, and then we're just going to superimpose the dot. We never take our vision off, just like with hopefully you guys are doing with a rifle, right? When you have a rifle and you bring your red dot up, we're still looking at the scene. So that allows us tremendous information very, very quickly, not just the threat itself, but potentially things around the area. And that's a benefit that is huge for red dots. The next one is the Binder effect and dominant eye. So one of the things I've always made kind of jokes about at the range, you go and you see somebody and they're doing this weird head thing, and they kind of like do this with their eye, and I always go, what are you doing, right? And they're like, well, I'm cross-eye dominant, like as if that really matters. I mean, this is my right eye alignment, that's my left eye alignment, it doesn't really make any difference which is my trigger finger, left or right. It's not gonna make any difference. It's just what eye I align it to at the end of the day. That said, one of the cool parts about the red dot, with keeping both eyes open and helping people understand that, is the Binder effect, where we actually do it in class, we take tape and we cover the lens, and that way you can't see through it, but you can see the dot. So your one eye will see the dot, and by the way, if you have a red dot, make sure on your gun, make sure it's all clear, and you can try this. Then the other eye, even if it's not your dominant eye, can see the threat, and then your brain puts them both together. So even though you can't actually see through the actual lens, you can actually see the dot superimposed on your threat. It's very, very cool. And so keeping both eyes open, especially in a self-defense situation, is huge, and the red dot excels at that. Another good one is that they look cool. No, I'm kidding. Another good one is that there is a big ledge. And by the way, if you are buying a red dot, that you are concerned that simply racking it by the red dot, by hitting something up front to move the slide back, is going to damage it, that's not a red dot you want to roll with. And I get it. There are some budget and cheaper red dots out there, and maybe that's a good way to kind of just get into things. But ultimately, when you have a duty or defensive carry, CCW, whatever your purpose is, where you're going to bet your life on this, you want a optic that you're not worried about potentially smacking into something. And the great part about that is, if we do have to manipulate the gun with one hand, I was always big into having combat edge sights, meaning that the sights on the rear, here's a really good one on this Canic. Obviously, it's obviously the sight's really close to it. It's not part of what I'm trying to say, but it has a really good edge. So if there was no optic on there, you're still able to rack that off of objects, belts, whatever the case is. Well, now you get even a bigger ledge. Big, huge object that you can rack this off of and utilize it in one-hand manipulations if you had to. Another great benefit of this is it's a redundant system. So now you have your iron sights and you have your optics. So now you have two systems that play. If one goes down, you have the other. And a lot of people say, well, that's kind of stupid. What iron sights are going to fail? Well, if you are a Glock aficionado or you are issued a Glock with plastic sights, there's a very good chance actually that they will absolutely fail. So having yet another optic on there is really great. Of course, we really look at that normally the other way around, where if the optic fails, we have our sights still there that we can use. So either way, and then of course we're going to talk about sight height and all that type of stuff and what type of co-witnesses in later films. Right now, having two systems instead of one obviously is a benefit. Another one would be failing eyesight. And I've actually said that from the beginning. I always said that if you're getting into shooting, especially now, you should just automatically go to the red dot, learn the system, because that is the wave of the future. Obviously, I still believe that now more than ever. But I also said if you have been shooting for a long time, but your eyesight's failing, old age, medical issue, whatever, that dots will really help that. And certainly that is definitely a benefit there. Off camera, Kim brought up a great point, which is a lot of times students will talk about having their readers, having their cheaters, their glasses that they use to see the front sight. Well, in this case, as long as we can see and clearly identify the threat, we're good to go, because we're still going to stay on the threat the entire time. We're just superimposing a dot. Whether the dot is super clear or fuzzy really doesn't matter. It's round, put it where it needs to go, and if it's calibrated properly, as in sighted in, you're going to be good to go. A lot of times, the dots themselves are referred to as a cheat code for handguns, and I agree with it. It's like a video game. We just superimpose a dot wherever we need to go, and as long as we can see that dot and it's in the place that we want that round to go, and we do our jobs, bingo, we're going to hit what we need to. So it really simplifies, also helps under low light conditions, especially if you have an optic that actually adjusts. Again, I'm not talking about brands or specific features, but there are models out there that will automatically adjust. But regardless, that is a great opportunity to be able to put your light on something, see it, superimpose a dot, and do what you need to do. Another one is follow through. So we talk about that obviously in the fundamentals. So after I take my shot, the gun recoils, and then I get my gun back on target. One of the great things about the optic, since I'm able to stay on the threat the whole time, is I can just kind of use that viewing window to get that dot right back on the target. I never have to take my sight off of, so let's say it is a defensive scenario. When I say sight, I mean our eyesight. I have a threat that I need to stop, and I send a round down range. Immediately and entire the time, continuously, I can see, is that effective? Do I need to do something else? So that helps out tremendously. All right, people, I hope that this was helpful for you guys. Hope you got something out of it. We're going to be doing several more videos on this, again, and some exclusive content on Patreon about it. But we're going to hit on form and function of the red dots themselves. We're going to get into some brands and features. We're going to get in how to sight them out, how to sight them in. I'm sure it's going to be the worst snow blurry day of all times, the day I pick to schedule the sighting in portion, because that's just the way things work out here, so you should enjoy that. As always, you know where to find us here on YouTube, or on Facebook, Instagram, and we put all our premium content on Patreon. Until next time, remember, it's always better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6.